Russia continues to slide into an economic backwater, and the sanctions imposed by the European Union play a huge role in this. There have already been about 18,000 sanctions imposed against the occupiers, which is an absolute world record. The pale cigarette butt can say as much as he wants that the sanctions only benefit Putinomics. But this madman's nonsense has nothing to do with reality.
I just went to the pharmacy. They told me there's simply no insulin, even though they promised to give it to me after the holidays. What is this? The president said there are no problems with insulin in Bashkiria, but in reality, there is no insulin, and I'm supposed to live without short-acting insulin. Actually, I'm supposed to inject insulin with every meal, but they're not giving it to me. What am I supposed to inject?
There is one significant drawback to sanctions. They have to be renewed every 6 months. And since the EU is a stronghold of democracy, all members of the European Union must approve them unanimously. And this is where a problem arises with the fans of the Russian world and Putin's drinking buddies who are sitting in the very heart of the Western world. The authorities of Hungary and Slovakia are already openly supporting Moscow and defending its interests. Every 6 months, Viktor Orbán gets his moment in the spotlight when he can trample on European values and blackmail the EU.
On January 21st, the Prime Minister of Hungary once again openly criticized the European Union's sanctions policy towards Russia. He stated that 15 sanction packages are in fact harming the European economy. The sanctions, developed by Brussels bureaucrats, have achieved only one thing. They have, as a result, destroyed the competitiveness of the European economy.
And once again, before the vote on extending economic punishments against the Kremlin, the Hungarian Yanukovych flatly refused to vote for it.
Let's remember that this is not Viktor Orbán's first such act of blackmail. This happens periodically. And within the European Union, there have long been discussions about replacing the 6-month sanction renewal period with a yearly one. In many ways, he simply repeats, Kremlin fakes. This should be seen precisely as a kind of, journalistic service to Moscow's interests to a certain extent.
In exchange for his vote, Orbán put forward deliberately unfulfillable demands to the EU and Ukraine. To extend the sanctions, the Hungarian government is demanding that Ukraine unblock the transit of Russian gas and petroleum products.
Orbán emphasized that without fully meeting these conditions, the sanctions, which are due for a decision in just about a week, will not be extended.
It's obvious that gas is just an excuse to throw another wrench into the wheels of Western civilization. Hungary has long been aware of the transit halt and can easily switch to alternative supplies. The Hungarian state is not experiencing any problems from the transit halt, unlike Orbán personally. Here, of course, Vitek will be missing millions in his own pocket because of the shutdown of gas schemes.
Everything earned through back-breaking labor is now lost.
Orbán has completely stopped hiding his closeness to the war criminal Putin and, with his visor up, openly went against the European Union, of which he himself is a member. The reaction of European leaders, naturally, was extremely tough. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk essentially called Orbán an enemy of Europe. He stated that the Hungarian government is playing for the aggressor's team, and that Orbán will face serious consequences for his pro-Kremlin stance.
Donald Tusk threatened Orbán with consequences if he blocks the sanctions. If Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán actually blocks European sanctions at this critical moment in the war, it will become absolutely clear that in this great game for the security and future of Europe, he is playing on Putin's team, not ours, with all the consequences that follow from this fact.
In response, Hungary's foreign ministry, after downing some fly-agaric moonshine, called Tusk a Soros agent. It feels like Hungary's foreign minister Szijjártó is a freelance employee of Russia Today, because he gets almost exactly the same talking points from the Kremlin.
Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó called Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk a Soros agent on Facebook after Tusk threatened Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. The politician emphasized that his country's government, quote, plays for Team Hungary. That's why we represent Hungarian interests. We are not willing to keep paying for other people's wars, and we will not allow anyone to jeopardize the security of our energy supply.
The situation clearly started to heat up, and Orbán backed down. When Europe didn't fall for his latest blackmail, Vitek declared that he would only vote to extend the sanctions after Trump's inauguration. Supposedly, he would base his decision on the position of the United States. Trump will come and set things straight.
The West is gradually learning to live without Russia. 2 years ago, I started saying that the West would cut Russia out of the global economy. Now, Trump has said exactly the same thing, word for word, literally using the same verb, that he wants to cut Russia out of the global economy.
Trump came to power, and the very first thing he did was issue a tough ultimatum to Russia. Either Moscow dusts off its sense of reason from the top shelf and agrees to a just peace, or Russia will face sanctions from hell.
Trump is undoubtedly a systemic enemy. He has no reason whatsoever to engage in any kind of positive contact with us. That letter, he left that message, basically saying, you either urgently come to an agreement or... It's interesting. When I read things like that, my fists just clench. Most importantly, it's either you come to an agreement immediately or we'll impose such sanctions. What kind? The fact itself, is it acceptable to talk to Great Russia that way? Are we losing the war or something?
You're quick to catch on.
Besides sanctions, Trump is also threatening to crash oil prices. And considering that the Saudi royal family are his close friends, he can do this very quickly and effectively.
When Trump says, I will play to lower oil prices, and this will prevent Russia from waging war, he is essentially right. If, on top of all the current difficulties, budget deficits, massive inflation with sky-high interest rates, and creeping devaluation, you also add the drying up of the foreign currency pipeline, then everything else will be in real trouble.
The US position finally sobered up Orbán, so on the day of the vote, Hungary supported the extension of sanctions without any additional conditions. So why did you back down, tough guy? The fate of his Slovak colleague Fico also played a huge role in Orbán's willingness to compromise. A real Maidan is brewing against yet another of Putin's buddies. The Slovak people have literally exploded with rage over Fico's pro-Russian policies.
Thousands of people across Slovakia have taken to the streets to protest against the policies of Prime Minister Robert Fico, whom they accuse of having a pro-Russian orientation. The latest wave of rallies was triggered by Fico's recent trip to Moscow, where he met with Vladimir Putin.
Fico, in the best traditions of Yanukovych, at the end of 2013, suddenly began steering his country sharply toward Moscow. At the same time, he was fawning over Putin and throwing mud at the West. Naturally, the Slovaks were not willing to tolerate this.
Fico's recent statements that Slovakia might leave the European Union and NATO also sparked outrage among the protesters. Earlier this week, Fico accused the organizers of the protests of being in contact with unnamed foreign forces who, according to him, are working to prepare a coup. In doing so, the Prime Minister referred to a report from the country's intelligence service, which he presented to Parliament on Tuesday. The opposition rejected the accusations and lashed out at Fico for using the intelligence service for political purposes.
Fico, apparently, is also an unofficial contributor to Russia Today or Solovyov Live, so he didn't stray from the playbook. He claimed that the Maidan in Slovakia was organized by Ukrainians and that 1/3 of the protesters are Banderites.
Is that really known for sure?
Fico's political future looks very bleak. He should already be packing up the trucks and heading to Rostov. Viktor Fedorovich could use some company for a game of dominoes.
A roasted rooster will peck in one place.
But Fico should remember that from Rostov, he could easily be sent off to a meat grinder assault. Just like how propaganda is now actively calling for all Ukrainian defectors and collaborators to be sent to the front.
That's why here, on the territory of the Russian Federation, there are so many former Ukrainian ministers, officials of all levels, and so many voters living here. Yet they couldn't even gather together. So now, just calmly go and sign a contract with the Red Army and prove your loyalty to the motherland?
There are 46 deputies in Russia.
Oh! Well, go ahead and show us that it can be done.
Orbán may be a bit shady, but he's no fool. He doesn't want a Maidan uprising against himself, and he doesn't want to end up in Rostov, so he always knows when it's time to back off from blackmail and when to bend.
Orbán is a man with a lot of experience, and that's why he's been doing what he does for the past 30 years. He always asks for the maximum. He has a maximum program, and he never actually expects that this program will go through. someone is bound to throw a wrench in the works for him, but in that case, at least he'll get something. It's absolutely clear to everyone that the gas valve is shut off and it won't be open. And blackmail won't help here. That was a strategic decision by Ukraine.
In order to somehow maintain his pro-Russian image and maybe earn a Kremlin bonus and an invitation to the Aqua Disco, Orbán blocked the joint statement by EU countries on non-recognition of the results of the Belarusian presidential election. Apparently, in Orbán's view, Lukashenko won in a completely fair and democratic way.
Some are in prison, some are in exile, and so on. But here you are. That's the right to choose. That's democracy.
It feels like Orbán wouldn't mind using Grigorik's experience in his own elections, and Russia would be happy to help him count the votes correctly. The only question is, will the Hungarian people agree to this? And if they do, does the European Union even need such a Hungary?
Think deep.
Orbán and Fico are confidently following in the footsteps of the Yanukovychs and Assads. And either they'll be thrown out of their own countries as harmful elements, or they'll turn their states into lawless provinces of Mordor, like Belarus. The choice for Hungary and Europe is obvious.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.